When it comes to cartoons as a kid, you probably turn on the TV in order to feel like you're visiting a friend's house, traveling on adventures with your favorite characters, or tackling the biggest and boldest stuff life has to offer. But the big and bold can soon be lost to the weird and wonderful, and from there, you're just around the corner from the spooky and scary, which is exactly what we'll be looking at today, as I put together a list of cartoon episodes that traumatized children. Viewer discretion is, of course, advised. Some real mature themes and images are discussed here, so just a heads up. With that said, on with the list. To kick off this creepy cartoon crawl, we start in a strange place, under the sea. Or to be more specific, in a pineapple under the sea. That's right, it's our favorite seawater sponge, SpongeBob SquarePants. Now, it's normally nautical nonsense you'd think of when it comes to Bikini Bottom, but back in 2002, an episode called Nasty Patty was released that certainly upset a couple of kids and parents alike. The episode centers around SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs dealing with the health inspector at the Krusty Krab. But what seems like a routine visit is soon turned on its head when a news report reveals that there's a criminal in town who's posing as a health inspector for free food, which we all know the crustaceous cheapskate Mr. Krabs won't stand for. So he and SpongeBob hatch a plan to serve the imitation inspector a Krabby Patty to end all Krabby Patties. With heaping portions of hot sauce and seahorse radish. Doesn't sound too bad, does it? Oh, they also drop it in the toilet and wrap Mr. Krabs' gym sock around it. Now that's a nasty patty. Seems pretty par for the course for a SpongeBob episode, you know? Guy does something wrong, guy pays the consequences in a hilarious fashion, and the episode ends. But it didn't end up turning out that way. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob serve the fast food and flee for cover as they watch the inspector take a bite. Or so they think as a fly zooms into the inspector's mouth, causing him to choke. Well, to death. Yeah, and to make matters worse, that wasn't even the fake health inspector. That was just some innocent guy doing his job, which is really dark. Riddled with guilt and deep in the thought that they've killed their fellow Bikini Bottomite, the duo decide to take the body somewhere to secretly bury it. And if you can't tell, yeah, this is where the colorful, cartoony nature of SpongeBob starts to drain away, and the more mature color palette takes over, and everything becomes dark. As they finish burying their victim, Krabs and SpongeBob run into two on-duty cops who are oblivious to what's happening and decide to take the duo back to the Krusty Krab. But as they offer, a torrential downpour starts. Which, yeah, look, I know it's underwater and it's raining, but we are watching a talking sponge, so, you know. The rain reveals the inspector's body and causes him to slide down a bank towards the cops. SpongeBob notices and stuffs him into the back of the cop car. Back at the Krusty Krab, the pair manage to smuggle the body into the restaurant underneath the cops' noses, and manage to throw him into the freezer to keep for later. Krabs serves the cops a nice cold drink. Not cold enough, though. As one of the cops asks for ice and marches to the freezer to get some, and the jig is up. The police open the door to reveal nothing. Behind them, in a zombie-like state, is the imitation inspector. He has come back from the dead to haunt his killers. No, they never killed him. The inspector then miraculously gives the Krusty Krab a passing score and, hooray, happy ending! Well, not for the creators of the show, actually, as this episode was canned by parents for the exploration of mature themes in the episode. So much so that it was banned in the UK, New Zealand, Ireland, and Australia. But believe me, this episode is light compared to what we've got coming up for you. But before we get to them, here's a little bit of bonus footage for you from an episode of the third season of Rugrats titled In the Dream Time, where Chucky is in the middle of a vivid nightmare. Unaware of his dream state, Chucky asks his friend Tommy what's going on. And then this happens.
Hey! Spike's not supposed to talk! What's going on, Tommy? I'm not Tommy!
His face eerily transforms and is accompanied with a maniacal laugh from a nightmarish Tommy, which luckily wakes Chucky and frees him from his dream. But that isn't the last laugh, as Chaz, Chucky's father, has a similar dream, only this time it's not Tommy's face who's mutating, but Stu's, Tommy's father.
Stu, I didn't know you were coming over.
I'm not Stu!
Now, I know they say like father, like son, but come on. Those two clips may be short, but they managed to ingrain themselves in the minds of kids for decades. forever remembered as one of the creepiest moments in the show's history. Well, now that nightmare's over, let's get back to the list. Cat Dog is a forgotten cartoon from the late 90s golden age, which is about Cat Dog, obviously. Following the zany hijinks of conjoined brothers Cat and Dog, some of you may be super fans, some may not have even heard of it at all. But we can all agree that its episode, Teeth for Two, has some of the most disturbing moments in cartoon history. The cartoon starts with both Cat and Dog in the dentist office, discovering that Dog's mouth is full of perfect pearly whites, whilst Cat's teeth are all rotting away. This confuses the brothers as Cat has a perfect diet and cleans his teeth, yet Dog eats junk food, gnaws on bones, and generally treats his teeth awfully. The confusion leads the dentists to take an X-ray, where he discovers that however Cat treats his teeth will affect Dog's and vice versa. Annoyed at his brother for ruining his dental hygiene, Cat warns Dog about eating his usual meal of garbage, and to steer clear of junk food. But Dog doesn't listen, eating lollipops, screws, and everything he can find to hit back at Cat. Later that night, while his brother is asleep and with his mouth throbbing, Cat tries to clean Dog's mouth, and this is where things get a bit disturbing. Cat appears as an inside-out, skinned version of himself, cleaning Dog's teeth, which is tremendously graphic for a kid's cartoon. The episode ends after the two go to war trying to destroy each other's teeth, chewing on sewage pipes, Dog using his face as a punching bag so Cat's teeth get knocked out. If you can name it, they probably went to those extreme lengths. But in the end, they both settle their brotherly differences and finally get their teeth fixed. Well, that may be a happy ending, but this episode was only aired a handful of times on Nickelodeon due to the graphic imagery of the inside-out cat. It was also removed for some DVD releases. Can't blame them, honestly. That stuff is nightmare fuel for 9-year-olds, and adults alike. But with that said, the episode can actually still be found on streaming services today. So if you're feeling up to seeing some inside-out Cat Dog, then go for it. But for now, on to the next episode. Pingu, the Swedish-British stop-motion claymation classic about a South Pole penguin named, well, Pingu. The show is normally a cute, quick blast of "noot noot," which is Pingu's catchphrase because, they don't speak English. Well, obviously they're penguins, but, shows normally anthropomorphize animals and overlay language as a means to forget all that mumbo-jumbo. Anywho, just know, Pingu, his family, and his friends speak something called Penguinese. In the 1991 episode, Pingu's Dream, Pingu is read a bedtime story by his mom, but soon his world is transformed. His igloo flies away, his bed sprouts legs and starts walking by itself. And all while an unbelievably creepy-looking giant walrus stalks Pingu. And the music that accompanies him is very, sinister. Things go from very unsettling to terrifying in a matter of seconds, as the walrus makes his entrance to Pingu. Yeah, just a reminder, this episode is for kids, like young kids. And this is how the cartoon creators decide to depict this walrus. Luckily, it's quickly seen that this walrus just wants to be Pingu's friend, but the damage is done. The uncanny valleyness of the walrus design was enough to terrify every child that watched it. Complaints were everywhere about this episode, and as a result, the episode was only aired a handful of times, and in some countries, even banned. To be honest, I could have included any of the 34 episodes of Simpsons' Treehouse of Horror, as the delightfully devilish Halloween series sparked fear in many a child's mind. But I think it stopped being a kid's cartoon many moons ago. So let's focus on way back when. Well, to be specific, 1994 and Treehouse of Horror 5's Nightmare Cafeteria. The episode starts in Springfield Elementary's cafeteria, where the children normally chow down on whatever mysterious meat is on the school's menu, just like real school cafeterias. Kidding, but today's different, as Principal Skinner is grappling with the overflow of misbehaving kids that are cluttering up the lunchroom. Jimbo Jones, one of the school's resident bullies, trips lunch lady Doris up and as a result has sauce spilt all over him. Skinner arrives to whisk Jimbo away to detention, but notices the sauce, tastes it, and it tastes good? Skinner then hatches a plan to kill Jimbo and eat him. But to make matters worse, he decides to secretly serve his former pupil to the teachers and his former classmates. Well, guess what? They love it. As the kids clamor for more sloppy Jimbos, Skinner's cannibalistic impulses continue as he combats his overflowing detention problem by, yes, killing and eating the naughty children, even so far as having free-range children. The kids realize what's happening to their friends and decide to be on their best behavior to avoid getting eaten. But of course, to fuel their addiction, the teachers classify anything as being detention-worthy, to the point that there's only 3 students left, Bart, Lisa, and Milhouse. But that won't last for long. Groundskeeper Willie appears to the trio to warn them of what's to come, but is swiftly murdered by a bloodlusting Skinner and lunch lady Doris, who want to complete their killing spree with the 3 kids left. They corner the trio, pushing them towards a large industrial blender in which blood is seen pooling at the bottom of. Milhouse falls into the blender, leaving the Simpsons kids behind. And it looks like, after all this time, Skinner will be eating Bart's shorts. But surely something will come to save them. Nope, just like Milhouse and their friends before them, Bart and Lisa fall towards their blending end. But as they fall, and just before their skin meets the metal, it's revealed all to be Bart's great big nightmare. Now, it goes without saying that, as a child, watching children being eaten is scary. Seeing blood, murder, all that horrific stuff. But what's so terrifying is that, as a kid, this is entirely possible in your mind. Teachers are seen as these mysteriously scary figures with something to hide. The episode was removed from a few DVD releases in the UK and Australia, but subsequently added back in. According to David Merkin, a producer on The Simpsons, this episode was created to hit back at Congress's remarks that the show was too violent. So, in his own words, they tried to add as much blood and guts into the episode as they could. Exactly what you want in a cartoon watched by kids. But whilst The Simpsons was watched by kids, you can't deny it was for adults too. The next episode on today's list, however, was strictly for kids, which makes it all the more disturbing. In 1976, an episode of the long-running children's staple Sesame Street aired. A show which revolves around a colorful cast of animal-like Muppets who want to teach you a thing or two. Like the Count. He teaches math. Get it? The Count? Nearly 50 years later, it's still a good one. Anyways, the episode in 76, though, had a much more sinister star, the Wicked Witch of the West, famed for her villainous role in the smash hit The Wizard of Oz. The same actor, Margaret Hamilton, reprised her evil role to appear on Sesame Street, all for an episode about fear. Yeah, fear. The episode was creepy from start to finish, and had an unnerving musical score which underpined scenes of the witch confronting different Muppets like Big Bird, who she threatens to turn into a feather duster. Combine that with charming Oscar the Grouch to fall in love with her, and posing as an old woman to deceive people. Now, I know this doesn't seem that bad for us, but we're over the age of 7. Imagine being a 5-year-old, watching your favorite fluffy, funny characters get threatened by an ugly green witch as creepy music and sounds fill your room. It was enough to make any kid cry, and cry they did, as immediately upon airing, CBS was inundated with letters and complaints from parents, saying that their children were crying and screaming at the scary Wicked Witch. The episode was quickly pulled from the air, and after a few investigations, it was deemed to be inappropriate for kids, and has never been aired since. It has, however, recently surfaced to mark a lost and found segment for the 50th anniversary of Sesame Street. Well, if one case of mad puppets wasn't enough for you, then the next episode on our list might just hit the spot. I'm, of course, talking about Mr. Meaty, a mostly forgotten show about teenage fast food workers Josh and Parker showing their day-to-day life, which by all accounts was an unsettling cartoon no matter which episode you watched, with gross-out humor, strange character designs, and stories that were bizarre. But the episode Mooch Master P left more than just a strange taste in the mouths of the audience when complaints flowed in as soon as it aired in 2006. The episode itself starts pretty tame, with Parker just wanting a bite of Josh's sandwich, But that quickly turns into Parker roaming around the mall looking for people who have unwanted food he can munch, or mooch. However, Parker's appetite issues escalate when he returns to Mr. Meaty grabbing one of the raw burgers and eating it without a care in the world. Now, this scene alone is pretty horrifying. A puppet's mouth filled with gelatinous, uncooked mystery meat, like the world's most disgusting washing machine. But things get worse. Parker's uncooked burger has a surprise inside for him. A tapeworm. Not just any tapeworm, though. A gigantic, almost alien-like tapeworm that launches out of his mouth and grabs and eats food before Parker can. Which leads to Josh trying to remove his friend's tapeworm by fishing it out. This episode is one that's gotten more popular as time has gone on. Not because it's any good, but because fans like to reminisce at just how horrific this episode was. With some people who watched the show as a kid stating online that even to this day, it still gives them nightmares. Well, nightmares may be a running theme, as next we're about to step into the world of one of the scariest cartoons of all time. Courage the Cowardly Dog. I know just by mentioning this show that some of your hearts have started beating a little bit faster. The show revolved around Courage the dog protecting his owners, Eustace and Muriel, from an array of supernatural and scary characters. As a kid, Courage the Cowardly Dog was hands down one of the scariest shows on television, and one episode in particular is remembered more than most, which is a pretty big deal when you think about all the other scary stories and monsters in the show. Who could forget the Spirit of the Harvest, or the Blue Perfection monster thing? But this episode in particular stuck in the minds of kids everywhere, whether they wanted it to or not. In the episode King Ramses' Curse, Eustace has somehow got his hands on a mysteriously powerful slab that once belonged to an ancient ruler, King Ramses. And, of course, he wants it back. So the former king appears as mummified remains to demand his artifact back. A little bit scary, maybe. Nothing too bad. Oh wait, no, he's not a normal mummy. He happens to be depicted with neon pink hair, moving in weird waves, all in really bad CGI, which somehow makes him scarier. But what about his voice? King Ramses has one of the most haunting voices I've ever heard. Listen to this.
Return the slab. Return the slab.
Now, to add insult to injury, not only does Courage have an angry floating supernatural mummy outside his home, but Eustace refuses to return the slab, which means Ramses unleashes a curse onto the trio, unleashing floods, ear-numbing sounds, and last, but certainly not least, a plague of locusts. The episode ends with Eustace being devoured by the locusts, and a news report reveals that Ramses' slab has returned back to where it belongs. But depicted on the slab is now Eustace, trapped for eternity for his greed. Wow, I mean, that's something out of a Stephen King novel, not a Saturday night cartoon. This episode is infamous among Courage fans for being one of the scariest to ever air, but at least taught us a lesson not to take something that isn't your own, which is more than can be said about our next episode. From one infamous cartoon to another, Ren and Stimpy, the show about a clueless cat and a psychopath chihuahua. The holy grail of cartoons when it comes to the creators seeing how much they could get away with. Well, Season 2, Episode 4's Man's Best Friend was an episode that really did go beyond the line of what's allowed for a kid's cartoon. The episode opens up with Ren and Stimpy being up for adoption at a pet store, when a man by the name of George Liquor appears and wants to adopt the pair. The drill sergeant, like George, puts his new pets through some rigorous tests to see if they can be his ideal pets, forcing the pair to learn discipline, and no, not in the honorable way. More the devious, manipulative, and controlling form of discipline. See for yourself.
What did I tell you about sitting on my couch?
But things go from 0 to 100 real fast when George tries to teach the pair about being aggressive and how to defend themselves properly. Or in other words, teaching them to attack. Things quickly backfire for George though, as Ren takes full advantage of being allowed to hit his owner and unleashes a rampage, which results in George's head doing a full 360 spin, his eyes popping out of his skull as blood slowly leaks out of him. Ren beats George to near death and stands triumphant over his owner's beaten body. Yeah, really. This episode was so bad and so graphic that as soon as the episode was seen by Nickelodeon, it was pulled from ever airing and resulted in the firing of the show's creator, John Crickfalucci. The only reason this episode is around today is due to a revival series on an adult Cartoon Network. Yeah, I know, technically a child never saw this episode, but the fact they never changed it from when they intended children to watch it is crazy. They thought this was okay, but that seems to be the tale of the tape when it comes to these cartoons. Was it creators going crazy, seeing what they could get away with? Or was it harmless, unintended depictions of horror to teach children lessons about life? Let us know what you think. Have you watched any of these episodes? Either way, one thing's for sure, every episode on today's list traumatized a child at one point or another.